Hello and welcome back to C1 Hardware. Today we're going to talk to you about water cooling your PC while doing a build. Now there are many reasons why you may want to water cool your computer. Perhaps you're looking to run your computer in a more silent operation. Maybe you care about performance and pushing your computer to its frequency limits. Whatever your reason, it's never a bad time to start, and today we're going to discuss what hardware you will need to complete your cooling setup. Now many things can be water cooled inside your computer, but the common items with every piece is the water block. This item is what mounts to your device, be it a CPU, GPU, or other item, and has metal fins inside that have water flowing over them to bring heat from the hardware into the water flow. Find a water block that conforms to your system specifications. If you have a recent AMD Ryzen build, make sure your water block is compatible with the AM4 or AM5 socket. If you have a recent Intel build, you will have to identify its socket. Current Intel 12th Gen or 13th Gen socket is LGA 1700. Now going back to 11th Gen and earlier, you'll have to review your socket type and confirm if it's compatible with the LGA socket. Now today we have the Corsair XC7 water block. Now this is compatible with both Intel and AMD platforms. Now we're going to be building this on an Asus Maximus Z790 Hero, along with a Intel Core i9 13900K CPU. Now we're also going to be cooling our GPU today. GPU water blocks are very specific and may only fit one specific GPU. Now today we're going to be cooling an EVGA RTX 3090 for the Win 3 Ultra Gaming graphics card. And to do this, we have water cool Heat Killer 5 water blocks and active backplates. Now once you have chosen your water block, the next item you're going to need is some sort of pump reservoir to move the water within the loop. Now these items can either be separate or inclusive items. In this example, we have a Corsair XD3 pump reservoir combo. Now this item is going to allow you to fill up your loop and keep the water flowing. Now make sure your reservoir will fit in your case along with each other item. Smaller cases may limit your ability to run certain pumps. So now we have the items that bring the heat into your cooling system, and we have the engine that moves the water. The next thing we're going to need is to cool down the water, and with that comes radiators. Now, radiators come in many different shapes and sizes. Make sure that your case and determine how big the radiator you can fit. You're going to want at least one section of 120 millimeter per device you want cooled, but some items may require more cooling. If you happen to have the latest Intel 13900K or AMD's Ryzen 9 7950X, you may need at least 2 by 120 millimeter of cooling. If you're also cooling a GPU, you will want to add an additional 120 millimeters on top of that. Now, often, the case manual will list compatible radiator sizes that will fit in your case. For today's build, we have the Corsair Hydro X series radiators. They're roughly 25 millimeters in width, and they are suited for this build. The next item in the cooling part will be the fans. Radiators alone are not always sufficient to dissipate the heat. You're going to need fans to have airflow across the fins to cool them and the water down. Pick fans that match your radiator size. Since all of the radiators support 120 millimeter fans, we will be having Corsair LL120 fans to go in this build. Now this was also convenient as the case we have selected for today is the Corsair Obsidian 500D RGB SE. This case already comes with 3 LL120 fans, and we have 3 more to round off this build. And you want to pick a fan that has high static pressure. Check your manufacturer specifications. There are plenty of fans out there that produce high airflow, but high static pressure is what you want for water cooling rig. The last thing you're going to need is the plumbing for this setup, and that brings us to tubing and fittings. Now tubing comes in either soft tube or hard tubing. Now, building your rig with soft tubing is easier in that you can simply cut the tube to size, connect all the fittings with ease. A hard tubing will require additional tools to bend the tubes. A heat gun and some jigs may be needed to get perfect 90-degree bends. Today we're going to be using soft tubing because of one advantage it has over hard tubing. If you're the type to change out hardware often, it may be advantageous to use soft tubing. You won't have to drain the entire setup to change out the CPU, whereas hard tubing, this would most likely be a requirement. Now, as I only have a single 13900K in the lab for testing, I'll need soft tubing to make things easier to switch out for testing other equipment. Now this soft tubing is going to be 10 millimeter inner diameter and 13 millimeter outer diameter. You're also going to need fittings. Now these fittings here are specific to the tubing type that I have here. You're going to want to make sure to match the connectors so that they are the same type for the type of tubing you have. Now these are going to come in all shapes and bends. You can have 90-degree bends, you can have 45-degree bends, you can have split tubing, and many more. You're always going to want to make sure you get a fitting that allows you to drain your system. And that's what we got here. We have several fittings here from Corsair and EK Water Block for this build. Last but surely not least, you're going to need some fluid to fill up your cooling setup. Your system cannot be filled with tap water as there are contaminants in there that will eventually clog or corrode items within the loop. Now make sure you use a fluid that's specifically designed for water loops. They contain additional ingredients that inhibit bacterial growth and anti-corrosives in there to make sure your water blocks and radiators last a long time. Today we have the Corsair XL8 Clear fluid and a special bottle to fill the loop. So yeah, now that we have all our cooling gear here, let's get into the build. So in this scenario, this is going to be the side of the case that is open, and then I'm going to want to have the radiator underneath that. And last but not least, I want these fans blowing up. I also want the radiator ducts to be downward at the back of the case. So this is all going to be in the appropriate build. We're going to need to put this here, this here, and then mount it all up. All right, so you're gonna wanna plug in these two PCI Express connectors before you mount any radiators and fans back in there. So we're gonna get to it next. All right, well, we've made some great progress today. We've got the motherboard mounted, CPU, memory, hard drive installed. We have mounted the radiators to the fans, both in the front and the top. We've got our motherboard power connectors plugged in at the top. And that's all we're gonna make it to today. So stay tuned next time when we continue this build. We will start getting the GPU mounted with its water block and getting this system further along. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.